PBS also under attack today, getting exposed in these Capitol Hill hearings. Here's Paula Kruger trying to say that, as CEO of PBS, she thinks that PBS is like the greatest thing ever and is so America.
PBS stations provide something that cannot be found on commercial networks. This is because PBS stations are focused on the needs and interests of the viewers they serve. Especially in rural areas, PBS stations are the only outlet providing coverage of local events. For example, high school sports, local history and culture content, candidate debates at every level of the election ballot, and specialized agricultural news.
I would just say, you know what, that's all fine and great, so long as you don't give us the PBS spin on everything. And unfortunately, the PBS spin is the mouthpiece of the left. And there are some reasons for that, which we can get into. But first of all, consider the money going into PBS. Okay, corporate sponsorship, 20%. I have a feeling that's going to dry up pretty soon. Foundations and major donors, something like 25%. That's a big, big part of what they do. And guess what? That's all Bill and Melinda Gates and the Rockefeller Foundation and all these super, super, super lefty organizations. So they have to respond to their donors who want this super lefty stuff. And that's what they're doing. And I'm telling you guys, this is a problem. This is a big part of where we are today and why nobody trusts the media, because the media does not deserve to be trusted. They don't. This is what I love about being solo, and I'm totally solo here on the Trish Regan Show. It's good to have you. Please make sure you subscribe. We appreciate the sponsorship, which I'm very transparent about, that we have, for example, with our friends over at American Hartford Gold. American Hartford Gold, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver right now with the special offer. Just go to trishlovesgold.com. Trish Loves Gold kind of has a nice ring to it. Or you can text Trish to 65532 in the spirit of independence, right? Gold is the one thing that can really last you. It's lasted thousands of years, shall we say, and is one of those great hedges against inflation and hedges against Armageddon, and just hedges against everything, I would say. 1-844-495-1115 is their number. Give them a ring. Use my name. Again, you'll get that up to $15,000 in free silver with qualifying offers. But I'll tell you this, PBS is done for, done for, done for, done for, as it should be. No more taxpayer dollars going to any of these things that are promoting so much propaganda. And that's what it is. All these media organizations you see are under fire right now because they've become nothing but propaganda outlets for the left. And the FCC knows that. Brendan Carr, who's head of the FCC now under Trump, he knows it. It's why actually he's been sending letters to one Bob Iger over at Disney, which runs ABC News. It's why he's sending letters to CNN, to NBC. And why do you think we're getting all the layoffs we're getting? Why are you seeing anchors like a revolving door all leaving these networks? Because guess what? The money's drying up. They don't have anybody like USAID, I don't know, to fund all their projects anymore. And that's going to be a problem. They were living pretty high and mighty there for a while. You had this thing called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. If you've watched this show before, you've heard me talk about it, and I'm going to keep talking about it because you need to remember this. This is super important. This is Obama's baby. Basically, what Obama did was he lifted the ban on domestic propaganda. So it used to be in the original Smith-Mundt Act from 1948. It was a Cold War thing. They wanted to be able to get their knowledge all over the world, their view of the world, into every little country that they cared about, right? Like these are only the countries they care about. So if they want to affect regime change, et cetera, they want to make sure their message is heard. And you could do that because we had sort of first mover advantage when it came to radio, when it came to TV, when it came to Hollywood, et cetera. And so they poured a ton of money, taxpayer money, into these efforts. But the deal was you were never allowed to turn it back on the domestic population in the United States of America, not until 2012 with Obama. It was ratified in 2013 as part of the National Defense Act because somehow they thought that this would actually be able to counter any foreign-produced narratives, and you needed to be able to save democracy here at home. So this happens in 2013. Suddenly the money starts flowing. Donald Trump comes into office, and what do you think happened next, right? Remember this, because you've got these news organizations taking a ton of money. AP's one of them. $52 million. Look at these numbers. I mean, they were just raking it in. The State Department was giving them somewhere around $8.5 million. You had U.S. Agency for Global Media at $37 million. You wonder why the AP is as biased as it is, right? Here's David Sachs, the new crypto czar, talking about all this misinformation and how it was effectively propaganda fed to the United States, courtesy of USAID and others.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt almost $40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC. You wonder why everyone in the UK.
Paid.
So yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC is getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually a lot of money. And so it makes you wonder, the left in general tries to portray itself as a movement of the people, that it's grassroots. This is the exact opposite. This is AstroTurf. This is basically money coming from the top down out of Washington to fund all of these groups, maybe not even in the United States, like all over the world. So it makes you wonder, what is the real level of local support for these left-wing policies all over the world?
Not a lot, right? I mean, what is the real support? It's like a giant psych op. You saw Bernie Sanders bragging about his 35,000 people, I think he called it even more, that he had out in Denver, Colorado, and then somebody did a GPS analysis and they found out there were only 20,000 and change. I mean, hey, 35,000, 20,000. 20,000 is still a lot, but then they found out that somewhere around 80 some odd % of these people were like professional rally goers. They had been to like 9 Kamala rallies, which is a lot. I don't even think Kamala had 9 rallies, right? I mean, not when you got to line them up and pay them to get in the door. So David Sachs is onto something. We're all onto something here. In other words, the money was flowing. So why do you think the layoffs are coming? I just got a text from a friend who lost his job at Salon. They're having layoffs over there. Super liberal magazine. You got layoffs going on everywhere. And I mention this because we're going to get to those texts on Signal and what happened with Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz and John Radcliffe. And I think this is all somehow connected. There's a takedown effort going on, whether it was going to be Russia back in 2016, or whether it's going to be, you got a lousy staff that's like texting on Signal all the time. There's something up. But again, remember what we're talking about, the amount of money, basically $1 billion a week going to media organizations. It's striking. It's scary. And it was all authorized by one Barack Obama. I will say this, you know what? You need to have some faith in your institutions. We don't have it right now, certainly not in the Democrat institutions, certainly not in the Joe Bidens of the world. And this is something that Elon Musk brought up recently, the importance of trust. Americans need to be able to trust these institutions and trust their leaders, which clearly we can't right now. No wonder why.
If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happened.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, but the good news is it's coming to an end.